Hello guys, I hope that you had a good Easter. So this is just getting back and started into the new term. This is going to be on Letters from Yorkshire by Maura Dooley. Personally, not my favourite poem, but I know for a fact that it's Miss Anderson's favourite. So perhaps that you will find some sort of way of connecting more with this than you did with the other poems. Personally, I would compare this best with The Winter Swans. The reason being is because there is an element within this poem that clearly the speaker wants to make it work. They want to make it happen, even though there are struggles and there are difficulties within this person's relationship. Not that it's very clear here exactly what relationship it is, whether it's romantic, whether it's a relative. That's not specifically shown. However, there is still the same similarity in Winter Swans, where there's a need to connect with this person that this speaker clearly loves and has affection for. Out of the full cluster of poems, I reckon that this is the most ambiguous. I did speak in my other videos about what ambiguity actually means. I put the word up here if you want to copy it down. So it's ambiguous. So it's the most ambiguous poem, meaning that you could read this and interpret it in many, many ways. I did just highlight one way that it's ambiguous is because we don't actually know who she is, or who the narrator, the speaker, is talking to or about. Okay, so a little bit of context. There's not so much, so just like Winter Swans, there's not so much AO3 specifics on the poet's background that you would be able to connect with the poems compared to, you know, other writers such as Thomas Hardy. There was good connections between his life and the poem, or for instance, Before You Were Mine, you had Caroline Duffy. You could connect that quite nicely for her life to that poem. However, here it is that AO3 is going to be hit in your essay if you talk about, you know, the beliefs and intentions of the poet, how what she's written here might reflect something of how she personally feels, or how she wants the reader to feel reading through this poem. So she was born in Cornwall, she also worked in Yorkshire, so you could make a really subtle link just to say that obviously the poet would be able to personally relate to what Yorkshire is like. So she worked in Yorkshire for a number of years, and this poem was in a collection of work called Sound Barrier. Not particularly important, but just as a fun fact. Alright, so letters from Yorkshire. I very much doubt that you guys have written too many letters to people. However, it is something to think about, and there is a significance to it. Now, letters, when you bother to write them, or when you sit down, you take the time, it's very clear that person, or the one who's receiving that letter, it's clearly an important message. It's something which you've really sat down, you've thought about it, you thought about the way you're going to structure your letters. There's always an important message within letters. There's a reason why we sit down and spend that certain amount of time, rather than just, you know, typing up on an email or just giving them a call. It's a lot more thoughtful to receive something which is handwritten, or even actually just typed up and sent forward. It's sent in the post box. It's a lot more appreciated. So it suggests this person who the narrator is sending these letters to, they have lots of meaning in that person's life. They're very valuable to them, and the narrator clearly wants to, or has a need to, connect with this individual that they're sending the letters to. So the poem is written, as you can see, as a matter of structure. It's written with 3 lines per stanza. When it's you should come to know, I'm going to start to do some videos after all these poem videos. I'm going to also go back through what exactly is structure and what exactly is form for all the poems, so don't worry too much about it if those questions haven't been answered yet. Now, if there's 3 lines per verse, this is called tercets. So tercets are spelled Tercets, so 3 line stanzas. it could show that in their relationship there's a slight imbalance, the exact same that which winter swans actually use this as well. The uneven lengths of the lines in the stanzas could show that there needs to be something which is resolved. There needs to be some sort of mending in their relationship. Now, so the first verse, let's start. So in February, digging his garden, planting potatoes, he saw the first lapwings return and came indoors to write to me, his knuckles singing. So obviously this person, this person, it's a he, and it's someone which she kind of understands and knows the regular routine of them, or of their daily life. Now, when he writes to her, she says that he uses this metaphor of knuckles singing. So write down metaphor for me. It shows that obviously he is looking forward to writing back to her. It's like kind of like that main feature of the day. He gets to finish his tiring work. Planting potatoes, potentially maybe a farmer, but like I said, it's an ambiguous poem, so we're not exactly sure. So let's just say, for argument's sake, he might be a farmer. Really hard day at work, and then comes back to writing that letter or the response to the poet. So February, the setting is quite significant. In February, it's usually a month, and we've all experienced it, where it's kind of the beginning of the year blues. It's quite a cold time. It's one of the coldest times of the year. Because of that, it makes us feel quite lonely, quite depressed, quite down. And there's an extra need for us to want to kind of be together and be with those home comforts and do things which will make us feel a little bit more at peace and home within ourselves. So there is a significance of that, but I'll allow you to annotate that freely, hopefully by some things that I've said. Okay, so he saw the first lapwings return and came indoors. Now, lapwings, they're birds that migrate to Africa throughout the winter, the deep winter, like November, December, October. So they'll go off and they'll migrate to Africa. It's a lot warmer there at that time of the year, and then they come back. There's a significance behind this natural nature imagery here. It shows that their relationship is very reliable, the same way that the birds would return back to the same place, back to Africa, back to the same place, and it would just go on repeat again and again and again. It could show that the poet feels slightly exhausted by the way that they have to have this distance, but certainly there's the poet or narrator recognizing that there's a certain beauty about the fact that this relationship stays so strong, just like the birds do, with their loyalty to return and to always kind of be there like as a stable reinforcement. The caesura here, where there's whether it is, actually I'll come back to that in a bit because I'm not sure that's exactly but the use of punctuation here, the commas, it could metaphorically convey the distance between them. There's quite a slow pace because of the use of commas, maybe to suggest how slow time feels without this person that the poet is with. Not the poet, sorry, the narrator is with. Okay, so there is a distant pronoun, so the person is watching, it's almost like they're spectating this person's duty, the person who they feel strong towards. They, like I said, they know the person's routine day in, day out, but they're quite passive. They're not really, they're not personally getting involved with their activities, not that they can, obviously, because they aren't exactly where that person is. But the distance here, as her being, or the narrator almost being the spectator, the person who's passively looking from afar, could show that they're emphasising that the space between them is quite painful. It's something where they can look to almost become in awe, or in some ways maybe they're jealous of that other person's activities throughout the day, the way they're watching from afar but not being able to interact. As they resoned in the warmth, it's not a romance, simply how things are. You out there in the cold, seeing the seasons. So, so clearly this person, the connection the narrator has with this person on the other side of wherever they are. It's not a romantic one, is what she's clearly stated. There's an element of positive and negative imagery. You have the knuckles, which are reddening in the warmth, which is quite a painful process of when your hands go freezing cold and you've got to come indoors to warm them up. And it's quite a painful feeling, but they're singing. So you've got the kind of juxtaposition of positive and negative imagery to suggest maybe the kind of beauty in the fact that their strength in the relationship still stands. However, the negative side of the fact that they are not together and they are far apart. The use of sibilance here, it slows down the pace. It could suggest kind of the calm routines of that other person who the narrator wants to connect with. Once again, maybe showing how jealous she is of his very kind of relaxed and chilled life compared to her, maybe more stressful, you could imply, or you could infer that might be the case. Maybe also the sibilance slowing down the pace. It could suggest that they are they're feeling quite sad, potentially. Okay, so you've got the use of enjambment here as well, maybe to suggest that no matter what the separation, so the enjambment here, you want to write that down, ENJAMBMENT. So the use of the enjambment, which is this line all the way down to the next verse, it could maybe metaphorically convey that although there is separation, their love and affection for each other will always continue. Okay, although there's that break between them with her on one side of the country, him on the other, they'll always follow each other passionately and always try and make it work. The same way in Winter Swans, no matter what their complications, they're always trying to make that work. So they're turning me with my heart full of headlines, feeding words onto a blank screen. Is your life more real because you dig and sow? So there's here it states the differences between the two people. So you have the narrator, who is clearly, let's say, it sounds like she's got an office job. Potentially she's mentioning the blank screens, like computer screens, and her writing him letters. And then you've got the comparison, the juxtaposition of his lifestyle, which is where he digs, sows, he gardens, planting potatoes. So clearly there's a difference between the rural country lifestyle compared to the urban city lifestyle. How does she feel? How does the narrator feel towards her own lifestyle? It's quite clear through the fact that she's, written something personal about this, the other person's lifestyle, that she's maybe quite jealous. She recognises her computer screen as being blank. So the imagery, the adjective there could suggest, it's obviously negative, that it's quite boring, plain, it's not colourful, it's not exciting, and the only excitement that she gains is from sending these letters forward. The metaphor of the heart full of headlines, so that basically metaphorically conveys how every headline or everything that she sends him, she does it with her full passion and intent. Headlines reminds me of the like newsletters or newspaper or something. Once again, links to the idea of the letter format, it being really important, well structured, well thought out. This person is clearly important to them. There's a bit of similarity actually, although I've said to compare it to Winter Swans. If you were to compare it to something like Before You Were Mine, and you start to make connections there, there's also some few similar comparisons. For instance, you've got the rhetorical question here: is your life more real because you dig and sow? Caroline Duffy also used a rhetorical question to when the speaker was questioning her mother's kind of past life. Could suggest a jealous tone, need to want to be answered, so need for comfort, to suggest maybe this narrator's loneliness. You wouldn't say so, breaking ice on a water butt, clearing a path through snow. Still it's you who sends me word of that other world. So there's internal rhymes, and I did try and explain this to you before, but they're a little bit, some people just get it automatically if you're good at music, but some people find it difficult to get your head around. Now, there's a difference between internal rhymes or half rhymes and full rhymes. So this is an internal rhyme, so you've got so and snow. They do rhyme, and the reasons why they rhyme is because there's the o sounding. So snow. So in some ways, although it's not full rhymes, the internal rhymes could metaphorically convey how they're not fully complete, not fully satisfied with their relationship being at a distance, but it's something which they are still willing to deal with. Same with winter swans. The fact that also there's the rhyming happening in the centre of the lines, which is quite unusual when you look at the other poems in the clusters. It could show how they're incomplete and they're not, once again, kind of linking to the lack of fulfilment or peculiar kind of setup within their relationship. Still, it's you who sends me word of that other world. All right, so... Okay, so moving on. Pouring air and light into an envelope so that at night, watching the same news in different houses, our souls tap out messages across the icy miles. Here we have quite a lot of religious imagery, or there is indication of religious imagery to suggest that this person who the poet is speaking to, or speaking about, should I say, it's obviously the person almost like a god in their eyes. They're in awe of them. They're like the divine kind of impact on their personal life. So pouring air and light, it suggests that these words that she's entering in this envelope, in this letter written to this man, it shows that these words are fresh, that they're new, that they're exciting, in great contrast to her very boring and mundane lifestyle. So that at night, watching the same news in different houses. Okay, so you've got the juxtaposition of night and light. Obviously, that's full rhyme as well. Maybe you could talk about why there's full rhyme here. Full rhyme. In contrast to, Winter Swans, where at the end they finally sort it out. Obviously, here they haven't managed to figure out a better route to get to each other that's easier with the distance that they have. However, the full rhyme might suggest some sort of willing to become more accepting of the fact that they are apart and there's not much that they can do. Alternatively, it could also mean that they make each other full. It could be like the conclusion of the fact that, okay, although we feel half complete without each other, at least when we have each other and we write to each other, we feel complete. So the juxtaposition of the light and night, maybe it's to show the contrast between his very bright and happy lifestyle and her darker lifestyle. It could also show kind of the irregular nature, once again, of their relationship, which I highlighted before. You have the use of the caesura here to suggest that maybe the action of her finally sending off that letter is really important to her. It's something which means a lot. And our souls tap out the messages across the icy miles. That's quite it's quite negative imagery with a positive kind of meaning, because it's saying that our souls, it's like our literal, everything that we have is being sent into these letters, like they have nothing else. If they didn't have these letters, they would have no soul. So it's as though these letters have so much deep meaning to them that they're almost like a therapy, in my view, my opinion. It is very ambiguous though. It shows their closeness, their spiritual bond, the fact that through souls they are connected. Once again, it's quite religious, that type of imagery. Through the icy miles, it's to suggest that everything between them, between their connection, is quite dangerous, it's challenging, it's difficult, but they're still willing to kind of close that gap between them. The same way that in Winter Swans, I'm pretty sure the line is something like the swans then came close to each other. Or no, it was our hands then swam closely to each other, or something like that. It's a subquote. So you do have the specific connection, the quote here, to the one in Winter Swans. If you want to make that connection and write it down, I strongly suggest you do that now. Okay, so Right. Do I need to cross anything else? Yeah, so the nature of the relationship is unclear. You can't say for sure. It's purposefully a mystery. Maura Dooley, the poet, said that she wanted to make people kind of second guess themselves and think about what this relationship actually is. So it's a really, really good poem for kids who are high ability, because it gives you that huge scope for kind of that critical thinking, which really hits that top grade. It shows the distance is problematic, just like Winter Swans, but also Mother Any Distance, you have that as well. Yes. I actually think I've crossed everything here, so it's like the enjambment, I've done that caesura. Yeah. Okay, let me know if I haven't crossed anything. Just put comments in the box. I hope that you guys are all right and you had a really, really good Easter holiday. All right, bye-bye.